yellow because I'm going to mix those to make orange in case I need it. And then here, I just drew a really quick sketch. Yours is probably going to be better than this. But the most important thing with painting in a monochromatic palette is that you want to make sure that the colors you put next to each other are different enough to where they're going to be able to show up. That doesn't mean that you can't blend colors. I'll show you how to do that later, but you know, if you've got, like, for example, in this painting here, up here, the man's face is a very, very pale blue. It's almost white. And then there's a shadow here and it's a darker blue. These colors are light and have enough contrast to where we can see that there's a difference in the tone of it. Also, whenever you add white to a shade, let me do that right now. That's called a tint. And whenever you add black, that is called a shade. A lot of times we just say like, oh, this is like a shade of this color, and we just use that casually, and it's not like wrong, but in proper art speech, when you add black, it's a shade, and when you add white, it's a tint. And then if you add gray, that's also called a tone. So I'm gonna set this down for a second. And usually with painting, you start with lighter colors. If you want to do the background, you want to do something darker, you're welcome to do that. But I'm going to start with the skin. That's kind of a good place to start if you're doing a person. But if you're not doing a person, that's fine too. So I think I'm going to start with highlights, and I'm going to get in here and just like really like be aggressive with it. I'm not taking a ton of time. I'm just throwing things down, and I'm highlighting the cheekbones here. I know that there's light that hits this part of the face, so I'll put that there. I'll put some here. Maybe a little bit in the eyes to kind of like get started. But you see how I'm just kind of like abstractly placing color? You might not want to make your initial sketch too detailed because you're going to be painting over it anyway. You're going to add most of that detail with paint. I think that's what can be kind of difficult about painting, is that it's not as exact as drawing can be, and there's no erasing, but you can paint over stuff. So like I was saying before, I want to make sure that this next blue is different enough from the light blue to where we can actually like see a difference. And see, that's different enough. It's not like so different that it's just like, whoa, but it gives enough contrast. I'm just kind of adding some color to the cheekbones. I'm going to add some color here to the side of the nose. Then there's maybe a shadow under the bangs, shadow under the neck. We'll probably darken that more so as we go on. And I'm just going right over the mouth. You can still see a little bit of it underneath, but just keep that in mind when you're painting. You're probably going to cover up a lot of what you've done. Now that's a good starting point for the skin. It's obviously not like anywhere near complete. I'm going to go back in with the light blue color and add some more to the chin. And maybe I'll start to kind of do the top lip. And then now I'm thinking that I kind of want something to frame all of this. So I'm just going to start with the background. And you see, I'm not going in just going like,
yeah.
Sometimes people will do that and they think, but it's just a background, and you kind of want to have a little bit of texture to it because it's going to create more interest. It's going to create like a moodiness. You see, like on Picasso's paintings, if you look up close, the backgrounds are kind of like slurred, and that's like kind of standard throughout most art, is that the backgrounds have a lot of different brush strokes and directions, and there's a lot of variation within that. It's not all identical, but it's kind of good to just kind of like slap that color on there.
Don't be afraid.
thinking that I would actually like this background to be a little darker, so I'm just going in with the black straight up and blending it on my paper. You're welcome to do that too. You don't necessarily have to blend the color in your palette first. Whatever works for you. And you see now how it's starting to kind of get that look that his paintings have, just because I've added like a bunch of different tones of blue. Go back with some black here. And you know, I have this line for the hair here, but I'm just going right over it. It's better to go over your outlines for a background, because sometimes if you don't, you'll have like this little hair of white like surrounding it, and it just doesn't look very good. You'll be able to paint over this once it dries. So just make sure that you have a nice background. And if you want to do a slightly different background, you want to maybe put dark over here, that's up to you. It just depends on your painting. I know because I have a subject here, if I put a little dark behind my subject, it's gonna pop more. So that's why I'm doing that. And I'm gonna look at it for a second, because that's important. If you've done a lot, you kind of want to look at your painting and see what you want to change. And I think I want to add some more of that greenish blue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to mix up my orange here, because that's the only way we're really going to be able to get that kind of color. Just take your time mixing colors. There's no rush. When you mix orange, you want to make sure it's like what we call a true orange. You can experiment with other colors, but if you want that very easy, simple, standard, complementary color mixing, you want the orange to kind of be like that. Everyone see? Okay, and so now I'm going to add that into my blue. And it's starting to kind of make a greenish color. But I'll add more blue, and eventually it's going to kind of look just kind of like a dark blue that has a very subtle green tint. It's still a little bit green. I think I'm going to get a little more blue paint.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just going to keep on mixing until I get the color I want. Okay, so I think I've just about got the color that I want. So I'm going to go back, and I think I'm going to use this color on the hair. Now, I'd like to note that these colors are like really similar, and the hair is going to kind of blend in a little bit, but that's okay because I'm going to add some more colors on top of it. I'm just using this as a guideline, but because these colors are so similar, we're going to have to add other colors into shade so that we can create dimension and contrast. I'm mixing a little straight up blue with that, blending it on the paper again. Another way that you can show contrast in painting is just from the direction of the brush strokes, because these are more wild. If I make the brush strokes go down more, that's going to visually make our eye say, oh, that's different from this.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we don't necessarily know what it is right off the top of our head, it just gives you that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good enough for my rough. Now I'm going to go back in, I'm going to make this greenish color kind of pale.
Mhm.
And this is an easier way, I think, to see the color, because when it's so dark, it kind of looks black, but you see how it's like this greenish, grayish, kind of a blue? And I'm gonna add some of this to the skin. I think it's important when you're rendering skin to have a lot of different colors, even if it's a monochromatic palette, because actual skin has a lot of different colors in it, and it has layers, and it's kind of translucent, or not translucent, but like it has a, oh, I don't know, like light goes through it.
Mhm.
Start mixing this in. And the thing with acrylic is that it dries kind of fast. So I've created this guideline, but it's not really like mixing that much. If you apply paint thicker, it'll take a longer time to dry. So if you want to apply something and then go back and edit it, it's kind of good to leave the paint a little bit thick so it's still wet. But a lot of it's just about trial and error.
Mhm. Yeah, I always find it so interesting that parents get kids acrylic to start painting with, because it's really hard to paint with acrylic because of that fact that it dries so quickly. I think it's kind of a tough medium to start out with. But you guys are up for the challenge. You're 8th graders now.
Okay. And you see how even just like as we layer these colors on top of each other, it just starts to look more and more like something. When you just have the first couple colors, it's like, it's not very good, but
Mhm.
once you keep going, you
Mhm.
just slowly refine and refine and refine.
Mhm.
Painting's kind of the opposite of drawing, because drawing's all about contour, it's about outlining things. Painting is about like almost like sculpting something with a brush, and I think that makes it more difficult.
Mhm.
Okay, I think I'm gonna do the eyes a little bit, and then I'll let you all kind of get started and finish up your sketches.
Mhm.